Sean, welcome.
Hey, thanks, bud.
Hey, so it's great to have you back on. It's been a long time since I last had you on when I was just the Fatherhood podcast.
Yeah.
And at that time, we focused a lot on just you being a dad
Yeah.
and kind of the essence of that. I want to do the interview today more specific about you and who you are.
Neato.
And I want to also have you share some news that you're going to have your second child, right?
That's right. That's right. Second child on the way. I was gonna ask if how long ago was it, and if we were trying yet for the second one. I can't remember exactly
I
when. All sense of time has just
Right.
disappeared
That's true.
between child rearing and pandemic. It's
Yeah.
just like all gone.
I do think you were trying, but you weren't. I think you might have already been pregnant,
Hmm.
but you weren't publicly disclosing that yet. And I remember we finished
Okay.
recording. You're like, "It'll be exciting for the next one because I'll have some news to share." I think I
Okay.
remember you saying that off recording.
All right. Okay. That makes
So
sense. That
it
makes a
might
lot
have
of sense.
been
That would have been
like
like 8 months
October,
ago.
right? Yeah, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Feels like longer.
it
Oddly,
does
feels
feel
like
like longer.
longer ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
have to check the archives.
Yeah. Yeah. Go back through.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, we have another one coming. A little girl this time.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are
We
you
hit the
excited?
we hit the double. I'm so pumped.
Yes.
Oh my god, I wanted a girl so bad because we have a little boy. I don't really like him. He kind of sucks. So I figure we'll just get a girl. Hopefully that'll be better.
And she'll be your
And maybe
favorite, of
maybe I could
course.
love this one.
Right.
Know?
You want a
Oh
little
man.
balance of that. Obviously, there's a little, Race loves his mommy very much.
Oh, that's
You,
true.
you
See, I
want you
don't.
want a little bit of that love
I
too.
don't know. I used to. It's so funny. That used to be a little more heartbreaking for me. I'm so used to it now. It's just like I expect it. I expect to be like, "Hey, Race, how's it going?" And he runs away from me to his mother. Like that's just a thing that happens sometimes. Um, but yeah, no, really excited. Charlotte, little Charlotte Jane Martin. We have a name
Nice.
picked out and everything. Cheyenne's due date is in 1 month as of yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah, so she got me out of bed early this morning, pull out all the baby stuff from when Race was a child, and well, Race was a baby,
Right.
and so she's just going through all that now and figuring out what we need and
Yeah.
getting it all ready, cleaning everything. It's all dusty and been in storage. So
Yeah.
yeah, very exciting.
Wait, obviously there's lots of stresses that come with that, but what's like one of the more very
Sure.
exciting things in the beginning? Would you say?
Like expecting another child,
Yeah,
you
or even
mean?
after they're
Or
born, like what are some things, the interactions that you might have with a newborn that are like you're
oh
really looking
man,
forward to?
there's like it's such an emotional thing. I don't know. Uh, I'm not really like. I feel like I'm not that sappy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't get like super emotional about a lot of things. But yeah, when Race was born, that was just like that was a different way of being. It was like it was like the level of emotion. Like, am I on drugs right now? Like,
Really?
what is happening? Yeah,
Wow.
like just so much love and like ugh, oh, it's so nice just being able to hold your offspring as like a little newborn.
Yeah.
It's a different thing. It's going to be interesting having Race around too, because with Race, just having the one, I took I think like 2 weeks off of work and then another 2 weeks of just like part time
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
helping out and being around and all that stuff while Cheyenne's recovering and um, now it's going to be interesting doing all of that
And trying to
with
juggle.
a little sociopath who like has to have his way
Right.
all the time,
Right.
and like
And how is he gonna cope with
with
that?
helping make sure he's potty training while also
Right.
dealing with a newborn. But I also remember when Race was a newborn, my level of patience was just like I was a completely different human being 2.5 years ago.
Interesting.
Like my patience level, I remember getting frustrated when like and like super anxious when I couldn't figure out like what was wrong with Race, why he was crying, and I can't help him. I felt so bad
Yeah.
about that. And
Yeah.
now like having like gone through all these stages of development with him. I mean, he's only 2.5, but it's still like been through so much now that it's like I think a lot more stuff just kind of rolls off my back, and
Yeah.
like I know everything's gonna be okay. It's no big deal. Like I'll just deal with it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think you'll have more patience this time around and be maybe less hard on yourself
Oh
if you
yeah.
can't figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless, you know, like the whole hard on myself thing. It's more just less stressed. Like,
The frustration.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think of like the stress of stuff like that as a tangible thing. Like you have enough stress and it'll stop you from physically doing things. Like you could have all the time in the world, but if you're stressed out, you have to take time to decompress. Like you will just have a worse chance of making the, you know, quote unquote better decision of like, you know, I have 45 minutes, I'm going to work out. As opposed to if you're super stressed, you're like, I have 45 minutes, I'm going to watch YouTube videos, you know? Like, that just goes along with being in a weird mind space.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be easier to stay in that positive mind space now that I have a little bit of experience.
Right. Yeah. So, an interesting, thought experiment that I always have, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that applies here. You mentioned, the Sean before Race was born 2.5 years ago was a very different Sean.
Yeah.
It's like a totally different human being. Turn that phone off,
Oh my
you
god. I wasn't even going to mention it.
So, obviously, it kind of goes in with the whole idea of like, what kind of advice would you give to a person that wants to become a parent, or to that Sean? What's some like key things? And I think you already kind of mentioned a little bit, like patience, obviously, right?
Well, okay. So specifically for younger Sean,
Mm-hmm.
I like. I think it goes along with being like a turbo nerd my whole life,
Mm-hmm.
but like I fantasize. I fantasize about things. That's how I like get into hobbies. Like when I first started playing guitar, I like fantasized about being able to just like be with my friends and play some songs we know and we all sing together. Like I
Sure.
fantasized, saw other people do stuff like that, had that fantasy, and then that's when I picked it up and started working on it, you know? And a lot of the times I would like a lot of things I like fantasize about, and then if it's not like the not think about the process of it, not enjoy the process of it, and just like want that end result thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Like some people call that visualization.
Visualization,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I visualize things like that all the time,
Yeah.
and so
And then you work towards trying to achieve that.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. And so I would definitely just
That's a
like
good trait.
yeah, no, I'm not mad. Like I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
You know, I have a lot of different interests because of that.
Yeah.
You know, but I really want to. Lately, I've been working on really enjoying every step of it because it's like you don't want to wake up at that. You're not ever going to be like, oh, okay, you know, 5 years ago I visualized this thing and now I have it. So now I get all of that bottled up, saved fulfillment. Like that's just not how
Mm,
it works. 5 years from now, you are you 5 years ahead,
yeah.
and that person 5 years ago is a stranger. You
Right.
know, um,
So you're not before
not
maybe
a
you would
stranger, but
rush to the end zone, but now it's more about enjoying every yard
right,
along the way.
right, or like I'll just take on a bunch of hardship now, or I will forego any enjoyment now
Mm-hmm.
in order to more quickly achieve that goal, or or you know do this thing just a little bit better or whatever. And now my mindset has shifted because for the first time with a child, like there's just no matter how you optimize or how I have optimized my schedule and like tweaked this and that, like you just can't do it all. You
Right.
just can't do it all.
Right.
That's if you could, then everything would be boring. What's the point of doing anything?
Right.
Like it's time, you
Right.
know.
Making hard choices is part of living.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Yeah, and I think I've come to the conclusion of like it's better for me to and it's weird to even like state it like this, but if I'm stating it the harshest way I can, it's better for me to compromise on my very steep goals, my very steep things that I've visualized,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe lower that a little bit so that in the meantime, getting to that lower gradient, I can enjoy myself and enjoy the people around me and look back on that process and not think about how hard that was, but thank God I'm here now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
that's
find
beautiful.
that balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taking pride in achieving the little things
Yeah.
and enjoying that journey and not
Yeah.
being too hard on yourself, because like you said, you're a nerd guy, and you probably, I think all nerds that love video games and board games and things like that, we love trying to find the best strategy and be super efficient and perfecting your strategy to win, and it feels really good when it works, and then
Yeah.
if it does bad, okay, go back to the drawing board, refine the strategy, whatever.
Sure.
And optimize.
Yeah.
But you try to apply it to life, it's good generally, but life is hard. And then when you keep losing, or you're not perfectly optimizing, so it feels like you're always losing, but you're not really losing. You're
No.
still doing fine.
Yeah.
You're just not getting that vision of like perfect optimization. I'm Elon Musk, or whatever. And you're just like,
Yeah.
reality is like, life's harder than a board game.
Well, there's just there's so many unknowable quantities. Like you can't
Yeah.
just wrap your like people who like have it all wrapped up have just they fucked up. They oversimplified. Like
Sure.
like there's got to be enough unknown stuff that things stay
Stays fresh.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a little bit of random chaos. Yeah.
That's when you get like my hobby's golf, so every Sunday at 9:30 I go golfing, and I that's it. That's just what I do, and that's my thing.
Right.
And I have my two friends.
And those people can be pretty
and
happy.
They can be.
Content.
I think of it as like a range. A range. If you don't, like, you're preventing yourself from ever hitting a point where you're like, I bit off more than I can chew. I overextended myself, and so this thing that I want to do a really good job on, I screwed it up, and that feeling of failure hurts so fucking bad. It sucks. It feels really bad. So in an effort not to feel that failure, you just don't go as far, you don't try as hard there.
Right.
But then that, like, if you're looking at it as like a
little sine wave
graph. Like a sine wave graph. Yeah, like your lows are higher, but then your highs are lower.
Right. It's
You
just
know
that
what I
more
mean?
just humming line.
Because that feeling
Yeah.
when you like perfectly nail it, like I think of it when I like have catering things and I like take on 4 catering events in a weekend.
Yeah.
Where it's like, unless I perfectly optimize this is 50 to 60 hours of work in 3 days.
Right.
And it's like, okay, like,
bring it on.
How do we do it? And
Yeah.
then like I have yet to like find that limit. Like I have yet to bite off so much that like I completely screw someone's party up, because that's gonna feel really bad, and I hope I never do it. That's gonna feel really bad.
But you're excited to push that boundary.
But I want to. I want to find where that is, because at the end of that weekend, if I have slam dunked all these parties and everyone's super happy, and I've made what I would make in a month at my day job in a weekend, that feels really, really good. And it makes it possible for me to like then visualize, okay, I want to buy this vacation home and take months at a time just learning construction and trying to build things and stuff. And it's not like I can do that in my 50s when my body's still good, hopefully, if I'm not taking those chances and making more money. I just won't be able to financially do that and have a large family and all that stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah, and on the drive here, I thought a bit about you as a person, and I'm happy to let you describe yourself, but but the best thing that came to my mind is that you are a Renaissance man. You're a master of none, right?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that.
So and it doesn't mean master of none doesn't mean that like you're not good at anything. That's not true. You're good at plenty of things. You're just, and I think amongst our friend circle, the best opposite or characterization of the two would be our friend Maddie, who I would argue is maybe she's a master
beast
at the mandolin,
like virtuoso.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you were to ask her to, like, I don't know, like, go fix the toilet because it's clogged or whatever, and like or whatever, I don't know, tell me how best to maximize doing my taxes, or like those are all things
Something
that
like
she
that.
doesn't care about. It's like, I
Right.
just want to be amazing at this thing, and
Right.
anything else that I need in my life, I can go hire a plumber, or I
Yeah.
can go get a tax accountant to help me with that. Like, there's no point in me learning those things,
Yeah.
and I'm not interested in learning those
Yeah.
things.
And we haven't been as close lately, so I couldn't speak to her
Right,
now.
right.
But I know, like, just by following her on social media and stuff, like, I'm sure that used to be more so than it is now. I know that
Right.
she's doing like a lot of other instruments now.
More
It's been
interests.
absolutely
Yeah.
crushing the bass.
Bass.
Yeah. Yeah.
But definitely in the
Stuff
earlier
like that.
years,
Yeah.
it was like mandolin,
Right.
mandolin.
Meanwhile, I can't just focus on one thing. Like I'll lose my mind.
Right.
Yeah, I have to have like 15 or more little things going on and stuff. And that's even like my work.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a question I kind of thought of to tie into. Well, I'm going to say a statement, which is I think that modern society extremely financially rewards people for being really good technical specialists at one thing, or masters of one thing. Very niche. That's what capitalism currently is rewarding of. Where
Yeah.
maybe in the 1800s it was very beneficial to be a Renaissance man.
I think you had to. I think you
had to.
you had to do that depending on where you were. Like you could hyper specialize if you just didn't have to worry about your financials.
It was hard to outsource things back then.
Right.
Right.
You had to
You're
figure
out
it
in the middle of a farm. You need to build the house. You need to figure out farming. You need to figure out the animals. You need to figure out fixing clothes and sewing and all these things.
You're running an estate. You have to be able to oversee the people who are looking over all of this stuff. If you're wealthy,
Right.
if you're like mega wealthy, and if you're not mega wealthy, well then, yeah,
still
you're
did.
probably if you were like even super not like if you were poor,
Right.
you still have then you're making all your own stuff. You're like I just read a thing about flour. What is it? Flour mills in the late 1800s, early 1900s started stopped using these like plain white cloth bags for their flour and started using like a printed cloth, like flour print and stuff, because they found out these housewives, super poor housewives, were taking the flour bags, taking them apart, and sewing clothes for their children out of them.
That's right.
Right? And so they're like,
they want free advertising.
Flower print. Well, they'll do like flower print so that they're able to do like a pretty dress for their daughter and stuff. It's super nice, like super cool.
Yeah.
But like it just what I thought of was like, Jesus, they're like the idea now, like that was so normal then, but now the idea that you are so poor that you have to sew clothes for your children, like, oh my God.
It would be like taking the grocery bag and then trying to repurpose it as like a Halloween costume or something.
That's right. That's right. Well, also, like talking about hyper specialization, living in a city, like you would just be better getting a job at Subway and using that money to buy clothes, because you could buy such cheap stuff because it's all outsourced.
Right.
And that wasn't the case back then. But yeah, it's true. I think capitalism definitely.
Modern day capitalism definitely is rewarding the specialists, and maybe not so rewarding for the Renaissance man, but
definitely not.
And what I would now ask you is, because I also feel like a Renaissance man, I think there's a lot of value in it, maybe not so much monetary success, but as a parent, how do you deal with raising a kid and going, man, I love a lot of things and I want them to love a lot of things, but you also want to try to help set them up, and so it would be in your best interest as a parent to try to help them specialize a little bit.
It depends on where your goals are. I think that that you know what I think of. I was raised with all these stories of like, no, you could like you're gonna be a doctor or a lawyer. You know, you can't. You know, okay. All of the people who I looked up to in the cooking world, because now I'm I have a catering company. I do my crawfish boils. I have a little cocktail thing I started. I think we even touched on that last time we talked. But like I have all these little things, but it used to be just working in kitchens. It used to be just food, a lot of like fine dining stuff, running kitchens, stuff like that. And all of these people who I looked up to, who I like read their books and stuff, all these chefs, like came from this background where like yeah, my parents or my grandparents ran a little deli and they worked 90 days a week somehow. They just came up with 83 more days and worked them and like, all this crazy hard life, and they really worked hard so that their children or grandchildren could go to college and become an accountant, and then when their kids like that blows ass. I'm not gonna do that. I want to be like great grandpa and wrestle bears, kill them, and make them into bear sausage for our family eatery, And their parents are like, "What the fuck, dude? I worked so hard for you not to have to do this. You now work 90 days a week and you make $50,000 a year.
Right.
What the fuck did you do? I set all of this up for you,
Right. Right.
But they're like, I didn't want to. I didn't want to be an accountant.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't want to do it.
Right.
And it's hard. It's also like you can't say that you're happier doing this than you ever could have been being an accountant. Maybe you could have just pushed through it and been happier. You don't know.
Right.
There's no way to know.
Sure.
But they're not miserable. They're doing their thing. I mean, you look at like David Chang. He's a fucking empire. He's crushing it. He's
Right.
got a family.
But he's much more than just a chef, obviously.
Yeah, that
He's
takes
an entrepreneur.
Right.
Yeah.
Which Renaissance man.
Right.
Like
Right.
you know how to do all that stuff yourself. You do it. Like there's a bunch of places
He
that
did get good at one thing first.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super
and
good.
then
at
he
one thing.
learned. I imagine the order was I don't know his full story, but I imagine the order was get really good at cooking.
Yes.
Get good at that, then figure out how to start a business and do all that stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
really, he didn't even do that. He just
And
started it. He just started it anyway.
capitalize on your skill.
Yeah.
Right?
He did. So he didn't even like learn business. He just did it.
He just did it.
He just
Okay.
did it and
Talk to the right people.
failed and almost went out of business.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then actually had like a fuck it moment where he was like compromising on his business to try not to go out of business, and he made the decision consciously to be like, it looks like I'm going out of business anyway, so I'm just gonna do whatever the fuck I want. I'm gonna like spend all the money I want to on nice ingredients, charge way too much, and just spend all the time making like really nice stuff. And instead of going out of business in a year, I'll go out of business in 3 months. But those last 3 months, I'll be gangster. And he does it, and 3 months later, he's like raking it in because
Booming.
people love what he's doing, which is
Yeah.
like that's so inspirational,
Yeah. Right.
But the point is, like he knows how to unclog a fucking toilet.
Right.
He better, because he can't afford a plumber during those 3 months.
Right.
And then you look at like there's a restaurant. Oh God, I wish I remember the name, but there's a restaurant up in Vancouver where this guy, it might even just be called Hunter, but this guy hunts wild game.
Okay.
But he's like your classic Renaissance man. He has like a cabin, and he hunts wild game. He has other people who hunts wild game, and he serves it all. But he like he has like a property with a bunch of trees on it and stuff, and he like cut down trees and made all the tables for his restaurant and made all the chairs by hand, and
Yeah.
like little tiny place, only a couple people working there.
Right.
But like once again, total Renaissance man thing. He's made
Yeah.
it work for him. I think he got into the limelight because like a bunch of vegans were protesting his shit, and so his but his whole reason was like, all of our stuff is super hyper sustainable.
Right.
We don't ever use factory farmed meat. We
Right.
don't use any vegetables that
He's not hunting
aren't-
endangered animals.
That's right.
He's hunting an
That's right.
overpopulation
That's
of
right.
deer
And he
or
has
whatever
a small
it is.
enough restaurant that he can do that sustainably.
Right.
And his whole thing is like
He's
these
a
animals are
conservationist.
living beautiful lives,
Right.
and then we get to honor them and eat them,
Right.
whatever. That's it, like
meat's
his
super
his
healthy.
whole thing, right?
Yeah.
It's super healthy, exactly. But oh, but his answer to like these vegans protesting was he has like glass storefront for his restaurant.
Yeah.
He set up a butchery table right in front of the glass
Oh,
tables
no.
where they're protesting.
Oh,
And he
no.
would like butcher these
Terrify them.
animals.
Oh, no.
It's so rude.
Oh, no.
Oh man, it's so
Love
so
it.
trolly.
Yeah. I mean, I feel
It's
like
like cringe,
that you got to make
but-
that kind of stand when you're being attacked.
It
a
got
little
it
bit,
got him
you
a
know?
ton of notoriety, and he is doing just fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because his message is not that unreasonable.
Yeah.
Especially when there's restaurants out there like seating 300 people and using factory farmed pork. Like,
Yeah.
that seems like a better target.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a tangent. But
Yeah.
But I think there's ways to make the Renaissance man thing work. Granted, if if you go and get a college degree, in a specialized field, you would hope that okay, yeah, you have this debt, but you can pay that off if it's a high paying field.
Right.
Um, and you could get away with only working 40 hours a week and still make six figures.
Right.
Whereas if I want to make six figures doing catering, like with
You're
my
gonna
own
hustle.
business,
Yeah.
it's going to be a ton of work.
Right.
And if everything goes perfectly, eventually I'll set myself up in a place where I'm making six figures and working 40 hours a week.
Right. Right.
That's the dream, but I have no illusions that if there's a possibility that won't happen.
I mean, obviously, I think either way, whether you become a specialist or a Renaissance man, both take effort, right? They both take effort,
Yeah.
and I do think that, like you mentioned, the guy in Vancouver, Renaissance men can be successful, can be very successful.
Yeah.
I think they can't be extremely successful typically,
Mm-hmm.
unless, or if they do become extremely successful, it takes time because you've
Right.
allocated so many years of time becoming good at different things. The payoff might take 40 years, but once you're in your 50s, there could be a big payoff.
Right.
A specialist can take less time and then more quickly achieve moderate success
Definitely.
at a younger age.
Definitely.
Because they've specialized. And then, like you said, maybe they only have to work 40 hours and they can then enjoy the rest of their time.
Right.
having
And they could
balance.
even then become a Renaissance man. They could take
Right.
that extra time, which I see more and more now. They're taking that extra time, and instead of pissing it away, they're using it to learn things and better
Right.
themselves. And yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's cool. And get super in-depth hobbies. That's definitely that makes sense.
Right.
That makes sense. I'm less thinking of I guess the role model setting for my children,
Mm-hmm.
and more being if when I'm growing up, I think I would love for my kids to be yeah, my dad taught me how to build things with my hands.
Mm-hmm.
My dad taught me, to be physically active and interested in the sport. My dad taught me how to play board games. My dad taught me how to run a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, which is a whole creative thing on its own.
Sure.
My dad introduced me to these multiple different types of music and got me interested in playing music. My dad got me interested in all these movies, and I learned about film direct, because thinking of growing up, I'd meet these people who were similar ages to me, and they would have this wealth of knowledge in music. They'd be have you heard any of these six bands that came out in the last 5 years? And look at all these things they're doing, and it was just so foreign to me.
Yeah.
But it got me super interested, and cultivating that in my children, I think, is important. And if they want to go into a hyper specialized field and make a lot of money, hell yeah.
Right.
That's awesome.
Saying, so
you
let
should
them
give
figure
them
it
every
out.
opportunity. Give them every opportunity to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to set them up for success. We have a fund started. We want them to be able to go to college if that's what they want to do.
I think there's a strong argument for the Renaissance upbringing, because being a part of a kid is discovering things till you find that passion, right? And
Yeah.
I think every parent hopes that their kid finds it as soon as possible, because
Mhm.
the faster the better, and you get more time to get really good at whatever it is you're really into.
Yeah.
Or you get really into it and then discover you don't actually like it.
Right.
And you move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
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 So.
I just also have I grew up around a lot of people who made a lot of money and were miserable.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
it's
yeah. So it
I
shouldn't
also
be
don't
about
put
that.
I don't put a ton of stock into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people who made enough money to not have to worry about their bills, so instead they developed a coke habit. Where it's okay, well, if that's what you're gonna do with your time, I guess what's the point?
Right.
Why did you make all this money and hyper specialize so that you could have all this extra time so that you could use it to ruin your life?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe just maybe just focus on the life part.
Yeah.
Which is something I'm working on now, which is like we were talking earlier, visualization and making sure that I'm enjoying myself as it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. While also keeping that balance of like enjoyment to discipline. You know, also be always be doing shit you don't want to do.
Right, right.
You know, which for me now, like I'm finally back. I've gained like 40 pounds during the quarantine. Actually 40 pounds, which is insane to me. And so
But you had gotten really
finally I'm
lean
back.
before the quarantine.
I did. I did.
I think you
I was
got
doing
leaner
good, and I
than
got
your
muscle.
stable weight, I would say.
Yes, for sure. But I've gone past it. Like I will, if I'm really not paying attention, I'll be right around 215 or 220. I'm like almost 40 right now, which
Okay.
is bonkers. It's
Yeah.
way too fat. So like, time for me to work on it. So like I'm fasting again. I'll have cream in my coffee here. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't eat until 8 o'clock yesterday, and like doing that thing, playing that game, but
Yeah.
trying to enjoy it, trying to like push myself, trying to see what I can do.
Make it fun.
Yeah, when it's like time, okay, I got everything done for the day. I've got an hour before I really need to go to bed, instead of like pulling up a video game for an hour or starting like a TV show. I'll grab Benny at 1 in the morning and just go walk for an hour.
Right.
You know?
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's better, and I can even just like be on my phone.
And you can still be on your phone and play
Right.
a little game or whatever.
And that's part of it too. Where like before, I feel like even just like a year or two ago, if I wasn't pushing myself and running that whole hour, I would feel bad about it.
You're like, what's the point? Or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the point if you're not going to do the utmost
Efficient
perfect
thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So instead, I'll just sit here and eat Cheetos because that's better. You know, like that's like
Right.
I'm trying to catch myself on that stuff.
Well, that's really healthy. That's like a good balance perspective on that, because
Yeah.
I think you can have both. You can enjoy a little decompressing YouTube video game time, but yeah, you can be walking, and your body thanks you for it, and your resting metabolic rate will go up.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep.
I know some people hate on people who just walk for exercise, but actually, per the data and all the blue zones and the people who live the longest, they're the people that are doing moderate exercise that live the longest, not hardcore exercise that live the longest.
Well, I know, like cardio is supposed to be super, super good for your heart health, and like walking isn't necessarily like strong cardio, but I also know that like if you walk a mile versus running a mile, you're burning like 2/3 of the same amount of calories walking the mile as you would if you're running it. So it's like you don't lose that much by just walking instead.
Yes.
Like if your goal is to lose
time
weight,
is a variable.
right?
When you run the mile, it only takes 20 minutes.
Right.
Or something like that, let's say.
Right.
But when you walk the mile, now maybe it takes 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So the duration
Is
of
longer.
activity is actually longer, which is why the calorie burn is quite similar.
Right.
Between the two.
Which is why I like the idea more of like, instead of going out and running 3 miles, you know, takes me 30 minutes, and then I'll sit down for an hour and play video games. I'd rather get on my phone. I save all my emails and like posting to social media and stuff for when I'm gonna go walk, and then I'll just go walk that whole hour and a half.
Right.
You know, because all I'm trying to do is lose weight. Like, cardio is great. I'll work on that at some point. Right now, I just want to get to a comfortable weight where like I started like feeling it in my knees and stuff where I'm like, that's a red flag. I do not want to be that fucking guy. No way.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of walking.
Yeah.
Or maybe I think
you and Anna both.
When I was 18, 19 though, I probably would have scorned it, or thought like that's like, unless you're hiking, walking's a waste of time.
It does help that I'm like full dad lord now. Like I don't care. I've achieved peak don't careness.
Right.
I am currently in sweatpants and I am wearing socks with my sandals.
Hell yeah.
So like I don't care. Like,
well, no, but
people's perception of me doesn't affect me anymore, which is positive and negative.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
I should probably care a little more sometimes.
No,
like, about my appearance.
But I think you care about the right things.
Well,
right?
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know.
I was reflecting when I was driving here.
Yeah.
That how much coming through, passing the school here to your house and the traffic signs and everything and the speed limit, how I've changed, and I really am obeying those traffic laws.
Thank you.
And it's not out of like because I'd be worried about the finances of getting the ticket, that punishment.
Mm-hmm.
It's more the thought as I'm driving through the neighborhood and I see a guy out sweeping his driveway or a guy working on his car, that they would probably appreciate the car driving past them going 25 instead of 30, 40.
Right.
And startling their kind of peaceful Sunday morning,
Mm-hmm.
and being just considerate of others. And that's a scenario where like caring about the right things that people think of you.
Yeah.
Where if there's a complete stranger, younger me would be like, fuck him, who cares?
Right.
I'm never gonna see this guy again. I can go
Yeah.
fast through the street.
Yeah.
There's nobody walking.
Yeah.
But then there's a crosswalk, and there could be someone about to use it. I don't want to scare them by skidding around the corner.
Right. Yeah, be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, being nice is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's another thing I'm always working on. Just be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, try to be nice. Try to be in a good headspace. Like you can't always be happy. Like
Right.
obviously, that's like crazy. If you're always happy, you probably have a psychological illness. Like that's not good. You need help.
Yeah.
But like even like being nice when you're in a bad mood, that's like a skill.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one as a parent. It's like being in a bad mood and being able to just like still be there with your kid, like play and provide for them what they need emotionally.
Yeah.
Like super important. Because that was always an issue growing up. Was like I had father figures who could like looking back, it's because at the time it was like, oh man, that's just a thing.
That's all you know.
That's
Yeah,
all my thing.
that's all you
Like at the
experience.
time, it's like yeah, if you're in a bad mood, yeah, you just like throw shit and yell and you know, and if as a kid you just avoid them during
Right.
that time. And
Right.
now it's like wow, they were babies. Like imagine being 40 years old and not being able to handle your emotions like a fucking baby. Like you have a shitty diaper and you're in a bad mood, so you're gonna scream your head off and fling your shitty diaper around the room. Like,
Yeah.
come on, guys. Like, Jesus Christ. Get it together,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's like the opposite of what I want to be, That sounds awful.
I think I had a tough talk with my mom recently.
Yeah, you're telling
And
me.
I think a little while back I had a tough talk with my dad too.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really surprised to hear at the end of it all. And I heard my dad communicate this too. And so at this point, both my mother and father communicated this to me, that basically that they think I'm a better person than them. And I was like, I think that's not easy for people to say, especially when people hate being wrong, and a parent that maybe is more authoritative, that they think they're superior to you or whatever.
Okay.
Uh, and I think that, so what I'm getting at is that I think, for example, your father would say to you, like, I think you're not only amazing, but you're better than me, and you're the next generation that is going to be better uh, to your child, and then hopefully your son becomes
so.
better than you.
Yeah,
And that's what we're hoping for.
Goal. That is, I mean, I think we touched on that last time we talked too. Was like that is, like one of my biggest purposes. Like I want to be a good enough dad that like my kids do way better than I ever could.
Right.
And
they're inspired. That you become their inspiration, but you also inspire them to want to be better than you.
Yeah.
And not like in a weird toxic
God.
competitive way, but just
no,
in like
no.
Yeah.
Like just they have an easier opportunity to take the opportunity to be better than me.
And they have that drive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so funny because I see so often where like, I mean, I only see like one parenting side, but like you have a parent who's like killing it and is super nice as a person, and then their kids end up like real shitty.
Yeah, and you wonder like how did that
what
go wrong?
happened? Yeah. And that's like I still don't know how that happens,
Right.
but it's like I recognize everybody's their own person and stuff, but the priority is making sure that, they grow up with the best opportunity possible. I think part of that is like when you are really nice yourself, and so you're more like lenient with your kids instead of thinking it with the perspective of like making sure they're in a loving and stable but challenging environment.
Right.
Like you don't want to be like J.K. Simmons on Whiplash and try to mold like a virtuoso kid who's just completely fucked up,
Right.
And hates you, but like, yeah, you hate me, but goddamn, can you play the piano? Like some dumb shit like that,
Right.
But then you also don't want to be like, yeah, my kid really loves me. I was always supportive of them. They're a meth addict, but they really love me, and they come to me
Right.
for support now that they're still 40. You know, like
Forge them in the fire a little bit,
there's a
but
balance.
we gotta have the balance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you want to
Yeah.
push them, but be loving. You
Push
know,
them out of their
have
comfort zone. Don't let
yeah,
them settle.
right,
But
yeah,
but
yeah,
also love them.
yeah. And then at the same time, you gotta like that's at all at the same time as like still living your own life because you can't put all
Yeah.
your shit on hold
Mhm.
because that's not setting a good example.
Right.
You know, it's like
It's good for them to see that you're an independent person and you have your own independent interests.
yeah.
You
Well,
know.
that's like what is it? Being with Bebe? No,
Bring up baby.
bringing up Bebe.
Yeah.
Bringing up Bebe. Like the idea of like these French parents
Adult time.
having adult time and being like,
And the kid knows when that time is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, this is adult time. Like
You have to go be
you have to
independent.
entertain yourself.
Right.
Yourself. Yeah, you got to figure it out.
Right.
You know, I feel like that was a big thing for me growing up was like being with my mom. My mom was, I mean, she wasn't a single parent in the way that like my dad wasn't around. He was around, but it was like, yeah, we were with him twice a month for a weekend.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so 2 weekends out of the month she had time. But the rest of the time during the week, she worked full time and was a mother to us.
Right.
You know, so like a lot of the times it'd be like, yeah, school's over. I got shit to do. And she was, especially when she was starting her own business, she was like, entertain yourself, like figure it out,
Right.
you know. And so that's when like all of the fantasizing and the a lot of the nerdy stuff, super nerdy stuff, which my brother helped with. The last podcast I think you released was with Arthur. It's
Yeah.
my stepbrother. I think you said half brother.
I said half brother.
Yeah, stepbrother.
Oh, really? Is that the case? I thought there was a biological connection.
No, no. My dad married my stepmother, who Arthur was already her son
I
at the
see.
time.
So Arthur had a different biological father.
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stepbrother. But I mean, was my brother growing up? Is my brother like he was like a huge influence for me. He would
Yeah.
pick me up from school and like play video games with me. He included me in their D&D campaigns when I was like probably an annoyingly young age, you know, but he like made a really active effort in like being there for me
Yeah.
and including me in things in a very like brotherly way,
Yeah.
you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, super awesome. But I can't remember.
Where you were going at?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I think that, uh, yeah, I think no parent can get it perfect.
Right.
And what I wanted to allude to is that, yeah, you want to be balanced, but
Mhm.
maybe it's important as a parent to focus on what your strengths are and what you can offer your kid, and then delegate those other things. So
Mhm.
maybe you could play the role of a loving parent. You still want your kid to get challenged, right? But maybe you don't need to be the challenger for them.
Mhm.
Maybe you can hire a J.K. Simmons who becomes their coach slash mentor.
Well, I think
and they have that role to push.
I think a sports
You know?
coach very often ends up being that thing. Or
Right.
like you always hear that about like a martial arts instructor,
Sure.
where like they'd go to the martial arts thing and the martial arts instructor doesn't have to be their like
Their love
emotional
support.
support.
Right.
They have their emotional support, so he can focus on kicking their little ass,
Yes.
and forging them in fire. And when they cry because they're not able to make the high kick, he says, put your fucking lip back in your mouth and try again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
can be that J.K. Simmons, and there's I'm sure an art form to that, but you don't want that for a dad necessarily.
Right.
Like
Right.
that's a little brutal.
Well,
and it
too
can't be
much for a
24/7.
parent to hold all of those roles.
Yeah.
And and it would be confusing, I think, for a kid
It's not stable.
identity wise. Like what am I supposed to confide in you, or am I supposed to keep my lip in and do it again? You know,
Right,
like
yeah.
what are you to me?
Right.
I think that's going to be my challenge because similar to you, I want to be a Renaissance man, and I feel like there's so much that I can teach my child, and I want to be that mentor that teaches them those things. But I also want to be that person they feel like they can come talk to me about anything that's bothering them.
Yes.
And that can be a conflict of interest, I think, sometimes, if you're trying to really breed physical health and physical discipline,
Yeah.
But
But
it'd be fun.
Yeah. I think that's something my mother did really, really well, was cultivate that sense of security and that sense of like you can I will always be here for you.
Yeah.
And she also did when we were younger. She did a good job of like still not putting up with any shit.
Mm. Yeah.
She'd like whip us into shape, um, and wouldn't tolerate like whatever. Like she was not a super lax parent
Right.
in that way.
She set the boundaries, but you felt comfortable
I
to
was
talk to her.
I was never scared to come talk to her about anything.
Yeah.
I would be more reluctant to share with her just out of the shame of having like dealing with stuff, because that's like shame's like that's a whole nother thing. But
What do you mean shame's a whole other thing?
oh, just like I feel like that's I've everybody I feel like struggles with different things, anger or um, feeling resentment or whatever. I feel like a lot of the emotional barrier that holds me back and has held me back a lot is shame.
Mm.
So like uh, an inability to open up because not wanting to share any like shortcoming or anything that I wish wasn't a thing or wish hadn't happened or whatever. I mean that was a lot of like I fell into a sort of like drug habit when I was younger, and shame was a huge reason why I didn't like open up and deal with that in a better way or sooner, you know. Uh, but as soon as I was able to, and the fact that my mother's the way she is why I was able to eventually open up to her. I mean, she found out about it and essentially came after me.
Sure.
And instead of just shutting down, I was able to actually open up and, you know, let her help me.
Right.
And she was able to help me because we had that connection set up.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the shame of it was like that was the big one. Yeah. I mean, do you ever feel that
like you were letting her down a
yeah.
little bit? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Was that a factor in the shame?
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. So talking about visualization, like I want to be this person,
this model son.
Well, just this human being. I want to see myself as like somebody who's like achieved, like especially back then, especially when I was like 19, 20, like I didn't want to accept my flaws. Like uh, I didn't want to like wrap my head around that. I just wanted to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
So like having to like when I saw that stuff, I would feel shame and then push it down.
Yeah.
As opposed to like seeing it, reconciling it, being like, okay, this is what I want and this is what I'm doing. This is who I want to be and these are my actions. These don't, they don't gel. So what has to change? It would just be, this is who I want to be. These are the actions. Ignore the actions and just keep in the little circuit that I'm doing, and maintaining. Whereas like that shame is what made that possible, made that cyclical negative behavior possible. I feel like.
Right. Well, and you're burying the shame, right, with distraction.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Pushing it down.
Right.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
for sure. Yeah. Which, I mean, the point I was trying to make was like, it was never a case of like I'm not able to share, this with you. It was that I like it hurts to, not because you're the wrong terminal, but because of the shame that's there. And if I didn't have a terminal like that, I don't think I would have evolved past that. Like I would still be in this regressive. Now looking back, thinking that's regressive. Like that's younger me. That's like big error.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do you think that in particular, like shame is that emotion that you struggle with in particular?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a
You
good
think
question.
it's like been that way since the beginning of time as like part of your character?
Oh, I'm sure there was like factors growing up. Like I feel like everybody has nobody there's no such thing as like a perfect household.
Right.
And if there is, that person's probably pretty boring that comes out of it. But yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of like, if not a lot of like physical violence around me.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of like emotional abuse.
Sure.
Not even necessarily directed at me. My parents like were both very, very loving and stuff, but there was a lot of like cursing and screaming at each other, and
These are adults.
these are adults.
At
These are
other
adults when I was
in
very
the
young,
household.
very
Okay.
young in my life. Yeah, like
Yeah, sure.
like whatever, anywhere from like 3 years old up through like 10 years old. There's a lot of that.
I see. Parents not keeping that private from the kid.
Right. A lot of that, and then like
And kids are perceptive.
Right.
They see that. Yeah.
Right, and then like talking with my dad about it, and him coming over, and then I'm sure he struggled with that way more than I do, because I see his reactions and how mine are kind of mirrored, where like he would do something like that or do something stupid where like he'd get upset and punch a wall, something like that,
And then he'd be ashamed about it.
and it would terrify me. Obviously, I'm like 6 years old or whatever, and then he'd feel shame about it, but instead of like he coming to me and being like, listen, I'm so sorry I did that. That is not anything that I should be doing. I let my emotions get control of me. That's something I'm going to work on. Never that.
I see. He couldn't open up to you about it.
No, I don't think he could open up to himself about it. I don't think he could admit that
Okay.
to himself. I think that once again, that's like a shame thing. He couldn't accept that that was the case. So what he would do is instead be like, oh, yeah, I got angry.
Right.
Like, deal with it. Sometimes I'm an asshole, and that's just how it is. Where it's like that is the regressive, like,
So maybe
shame
it was a
mentality.
learned behavior that
I
you
think
saw.
so.
You saw
Yeah.
that and went, oh, when a person messes up, they shouldn't talk about it. They should just move on and bury it.
Well, it was also like, he was a drug addict too. He was an alcoholic.
Right.
And that's, I think, part of the alcoholic thing is like, cover it up. Cover it up. Don't let anyone see. Lots of social manipulation. Lots of gaslighting. Lots of not admitting it to yourself. A lot of like, everything's fine. This is totally manageable. And I think that all comes from, most of the time, from a place of shame.
I see.
Yeah. It's easier just not to look at it.
I appreciate the explanation because personally for me, I don't think shame is something I ever struggle with, ever. So it's just something that doesn't, I can understand it, but it doesn't resonate with me because it's not something I ever had to cope with.
Sure.
Because I had such a shameless father.
Yeah,
That always
sure
was
that
just
helped.
very open about sharing everything and not even caring
And
if
admitting
it was
his
a
mistakes.
problem.
That was the big one, I
Sure.
think. That's the big one. Is
Right.
like being like, yeah, I fucked that up. I'm probably gonna do it again tomorrow.
Right. Right. And so it made it very clear to me that it's okay to talk about mess ups because who cares? It happens.
Right.
And
Right.
if someone got offended, oopsies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
but the
very
idea of
nonchalant.
like, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Right.
Never, ever had a sentiment like that from my dad. Ever. Everything was deliberate, conscious decision by him to do that thing that clearly wasn't the right thing to do. Like, which is, I think, also his like.
Because that was maybe his goal. It was his
machismo.
visualization. Like I'm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it
when
all
he didn't
ties
achieve
in.
it, it's like, oh, bury it because that's not my dream reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it got to the point where it was like, I mean, I'm sure alcohol didn't help, but
Right.
it got to the point where it was like completely delusional, where he still saw himself as this like guy when he was like super emaciated and like really fucked up all the time, where it's like, yeah, he just couldn't face that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that was shame, because looking back too, there were also moments where like you could see little glimpses of like realizations, and then like him dealing with it and then him pushing it aside.
Right. Can I ask you a hard question?
Oh boy. Sure. Let's do it.
Like, more out of not curiosity. There's someone in my life that I think about.
Mm-hmm.
I think about when people are going through a hard time.
Yeah.
Your father was going through a hard time, and like,
yeah.
Generally, when people are in a good place, they try to help those people. They want to help those people as best they can, and then usually at some point there's a realization that the person who's in trouble, they can't get out of that unless they decide they ultimately want to. So the good person that's trying to help gets frustrated, and sometimes it gets to a point where you just go, man, I'm here for you when you want to get better, but I can't be spending all my time trying to help someone who's not interested in being helped.
Well, that's the Al-Anon thing. Do you know Al-Anon?
No. What is
so
that?
there's an AA. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous.
Oh, okay.
And then Al-Anon is for the family or loved ones of people who are addicts, and it's dealing with having a loved one who's an addict. And that is one of the things they teach. Is like, yeah, be there, be communicative, be there with them, let them know that you're there for them, and do not become codependent. That's a big one, because people will be like, I've got to help this person who's super fucked up, and they allow that person to drag them down and use them and manipulate them, because it's a super consistent pattern of manipulation when it comes to addiction. So it's easy for people who are really close to that person, who love that person, to be dragged into that. I need help. Just gotta send me to rehab. I just need a little bit of money to get on my feet. Then they use that to go buy drugs. That's like tale as old as time.
Right.
And it's super consistent. Yeah. But like, it's like you can only do so much.
Right.
Which is hard as fuck. That's what I think of most when I think of like parents who have kids who are dealing
going
with
through that. Yeah.
Like, how do you deal with that emotionally? How are you making sure you're there for your kid, but then if they keep, like, you're not enabling them by being codependent?
Right.
That's got to be a nightmare. I can't even imagine. I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
We had that question on our final test for our high school.
Oh my God.
That it was that scenario, right? I assume it was the same scenario that I got.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like, what do you do as a parent when it gets to that point? And you initially say, well, I wouldn't let it get to that point.
Of course.
But then it's like,
because you can control everything in the whole world, and everything's a known quantity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's better to think that way, I guess, than think the other way, where you can't control anything and you're helpless and help me, I'm a little baby.
Right. It's more empowering, certainly, to think that you can control everything.
But it becomes toxic if you actually believe that.
Yeah. True.
Anyway, you had a hard question. What was your hard question?
I guess the hard question was, and you kind of answered it, essentially, which was like, I wonder, like, I can imagine a person can have regret if they feel like they didn't try hard enough or help enough, or maybe there was something they could have done in order to get that person out of it, to help them. And the burden, that guilt. But then you got to tell yourself, well, I shouldn't feel guilty about it. I did everything I could have, or, and do you carry that at all?
Yes.
You do?
Oh, a ton.
Okay.
Oh, a ton. Yeah. It's a hard one. I mean, I had this conversation with my sister somewhat recently.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, that's really hard. I mean, I was 19, maybe 20, no, 20,
Right.
20, I think, when our dad died. And oh man, yeah, still deal with that. Like, should have been there more, should have made him my priority, should have been more available to him, should have been more forceful in getting him to stop, which, I mean, even now I'm like, I don't know that that's even possible. Yeah, but I mean, with the help of our stepsister, Arthur's older sister, she's the one who really helped us. Like, she's the eldest of us, and she helped us be like she came in and was just like, you're going to rehab. And I was like, no. She's like, well, truck's right here, and you're at this point you can't physically stop me. So, yep, you're getting in the truck. We're going to rehab. She fucking did that. But then he just, like, when he was there, he would say shit like, no, these people here are like actual addicts. I was like, Dad, like, you're fucked up. Like, what do you mean they're actual addicts? Like, there's like bottles of Smirnoff around your room. Like
Right,
but
to him, alcoholism is not as bad as a drug addict.
It's the complete denial of
or
one's
he's
own
in
situation.
control of his alcoholism.
Or he's delusional. I think
Right.
it's a level of delusion. I think that's the shame thing. I think the difference between shame and regret is shame you can't look at. Shame you look at, and the physical, like, it's physically painful and you can't deal with it in a constructive, positive way. Regret is normal. If you don't have any regret, it means you didn't take any chances.
Right.
It means you didn't try to do something that's difficult and fuck up, which you have to do to be a good person.
Right.
You have to try difficult things and fuck up. Like that's just part of it, you know. Or I regret I didn't, or like little things that you learn from. You can't learn from shame. You learn from regret.
Right.
Regret's a learning tool. Shame is a toxic reaction. You
Right.
know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh yeah, a lot of that I'm still dealing with
Still
and
dealing
going
with it.
through. Yeah. Yeah, man, it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's a
think. I
thing.
mean, I'm sure people tell you, but it's like you're basically a young man still becoming an adult. Like you obviously had a lot going on at the time period, trying to make money and all this stuff, and
Yeah.
there's obviously like it's not
It's a lot
your
of
burden
reasons.
to hold.
There's lots of excuses. There's lots of like self forgiveness. There's lots of looking back and being able to deal with it. But I mean, part of the shame thing is just dealing with it in chunks. It's just like
Right.
breaking it down. Okay, let's
Right.
look at this. Let's examine this.
Sure.
And then deal with it in pieces.
Right.
But that's, I mean, yeah. I mean, all of that's valid. You know.
I think also during that time period, my timelines might be off, but I think both you and I had a period where we were concerned about a friend of ours, uh, and we were worried about how he was doing. We weren't so worried for his life completely, but he was in a very depressed state,
Yeah.
and we were trying very hard to get him like to start working and start like being a participant in society, and
Yep.
he was. And I think for both of us, it got to the point where it was like we were frustrated and it was a burden we were no longer willing to hold, so we kind of just like let it go. um, I remember having that conversation with you, and then what I came to realize with that, and just hoping that this could maybe help, because I was concerned about it, and then that person did tell me at some point that they did try to take their own life, failed, thankfully, but I remember I reached a point I realized that, oh, I'm not the right person to help him out of this,
Yeah.
because I just can't resonate or get through to him.
Yeah.
So therefore, let me at least I'll try to find. And I found someone else, another friend, to help him out, and that friend helped him through it. And I reached out to that friend and I was like, hey man, do you think you could reconnect and maybe help this guy out?
Yeah.
So I care about him, but I'm not getting through to him. Maybe you can try.
Right.
And ultimately it worked out, and and
Yeah.
he
It's going
thrived
well.
and got better,
Yeah.
and everything's
Yeah.
great
It's killing
now.
it. Yeah.
And it feels good to, but I also know that I didn't do it. I didn't change him or do anything.
No.
You know, and there is a point where ultimately he did it. He figured it out himself.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it wasn't a burden for me to carry. That it was a burden that I was maybe carried and worried about, and was worried about the idea, because you always hear amongst friends that like there was that one friend in the social group that killed themselves or died or whatever, and
Yeah.
everyone feels bad, and I'm very grateful that that hasn't happened in our
Yeah.
social circle.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it is because we look out for each other, care for each other,
Try
give
to.
love and support,
Yeah.
try to be open, have open communication in our group, as best as we can.
Definitely.
But ultimately, even when something like that's happening, you do the best, but then you can't hold on to it, too much.
Yeah. You gotta do what you can with what you got.
Right.
You gotta deal with it in any way you can. It's hard, and people have more capacity than others to deal with that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah. No one lives in a vacuum.
Right. But I do think that, like you said, when life is perfect, people kind of end up being boring.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot to be gained from the hardships of life, because you can create something brighter and more beautiful.
So long as you're seeing things that way. That's like in the examination of shame, like shame versus regret. Like you can learn from regret, you can't learn from shame. So like if you're taking these hardships can twist you into a fucking monster, right? Or if you have the proper support system and you were raised really well and you're able to have the fortitude that you were born with, whatever all those factors are that come into you being able to take this shitty situation and these like awful things and turn them into something that can better yourself and be a teaching thing for you and help you better others, namely like your children, like without them having to actually go through it themselves.
Right.
Like that's massive. That's the difference, you know. And so like being physically fit, like being mentally fit, trying to constantly work on that stuff, that's the only way you continue growing. You know, being able to take that stuff in and make it into something positive, make it into something at least like a learning experience.
Right.
It's like fucking up like is not a bad thing. You're gonna fuck up.
Right.
It is what it is. It's not positive. It doesn't feel good, but the only negative is like not learning from it.
Right.
Not adjusting, not growing. Because the whole thing's growth. Eventually, we're all gonna die. So
Right.
you know you can't be buried with it.
Right.
But you can make the best of what you've got, and that's part of like also the visualization thing too. It's like you can't, you know, if you worked for 5 years to become the greatest guitar player ever, but you spent those 5 years shunning all your family and friends because you only had time to do that and not living your life and becoming a big fat slob and like doing all these things that are like obviously negative. Obviously, it's a weird scenario, but at the end of those 5 years, you're not going to be a really good guitar player and then be fulfilled and happy because it's all a balance. You need to enjoy that process, you know, and be living your life in the meantime.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well.
Love it. I love all this deep stuff, this deep conversation. We've been going for good over an hour now.
Goddamn.
And I'd like to, unless there's anything more you want to touch on the deeper stuff, but we can take it toward a different, more surface level direction.
Yeah, I'm super into that.
Dude,
yeah.
I want you to just talk a bit more. I had a curious thought, which was, how do you think that your ability or your problem of getting really interested in a lot of things all the time.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a problem or ability. It's just a thing. It just is. Yeah.
Has it always been that way?
Yeah. I just, there's like, we're sitting in my like breakfast nook where I have a project that I started almost a year ago that I haven't touched in like a long,
but the frames
time.
and all that stuff, that's the little project
there. the little sculpture there.
Oh, the sculpture, that's beautiful.
I got into sculpting. I have a
clay?
little kiln. Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I got a little kiln. You know, I already had it, so I was like, well, maybe I'll get into sculpting, make like, you know, slip cast like sculptures and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Super fun.
Yeah.
I'm super into tiki and tropical cocktails. Get into mugs. You know, making tiki
cool.
mugs.
Yeah.
Right. Good times. So I started that, and then I haven't done it in like 9 months or something. However long it's been since I've touched it. So like, I have like a million things like that. So many things that are that.
Yeah.
But anyway, what was your question regarding it?
My question was, like, first, you know, how did you become like that? And is just the internet, like, thanks to the internet, you know?
No, I think it's the visualization fantasy thing. I think I see somebody who's like the hyper focused, really good at making this thing. Like, okay, the sculpture.
Right.
Like, I want to make tiki mugs. Like, that seems like fun. There's this guy, Van Tiki. If you look him up on Instagram, you'll see him. He is this guy in Eugene, Oregon, who went to like school for it. He went to college and is a sculptor.
For
He's
ceramics
really good.
and stuff,
ceramicist, yeah. And he has his own like ceramic studio, and he makes videos of him making ceramics.
Dope.
And he makes tiki mugs. That is what he does for a living. And he makes these absolutely insanely ornate pieces of art that you drink booze out of. Like, ridiculous. And like really funny stuff. He did like a bunch of like, he did this whales. He made one of the recent ones he did a lava lamp with like a face on it, out of ceramics that you can drink cocktails out of.
That's awesome.
It's hilarious. It's great. But he'll do these crazy limited runs of like 200 mugs. They'll sell out within 3 minutes of him posting them pre-sale.
Wow.
Like 3 months ahead of time. And after he makes the run of mugs, he'll destroy the molds, so you can never get those mugs again.
Oh, and he videos like the destruction of it, so you
the
know
mold.
you have like
there's 200.
specialty thing.
I have number 58 of 200.
That's kind of cool.
It's super
It's
cool.
dope because you make it like an
Super
artificial supply.
And he'll do these
thing.
super limited ones where like he'll do gold leaf finish on like the top of it, and they're like
Wow.
$600 tiki
People
mugs.
buy that shit.
You cannot.
Wow.
They'll resell them on. He won't sell more than one to a household because people will resell them on eBay for like
double.
$1,000.
Wow.
And they'll get snapped up. Yeah, especially older ones when he wasn't as popular that are like really hard to find.
Talk
now.
about a specialist niche
Right.
market.
Okay,
right?
so I see somebody like him, right, and I'll spend 100 hours worth of like watching his content,
learning
and seeing what he's doing and getting super into it and fantasizing about
I want to do that.
making something. What if I were to? What kind of mug would I make? And I mean, that's what I'm working on there. Is like a zombie mug. It's a classic mug. There's a bunch of different really cool zombie head mugs. There's one where like it's the upside down, you're drinking out of the neck. That's super
that's
fun.
cool. Yep.
There's a bunch of really cool ones. But I was like, okay, quarantine zombie. That's fun. So
Nice.
I made a little like zombie guy with his mask sewn to his face.
Right?
It's like that's just fun.
Yeah.
So I like fantasized about that for a long time until finally I was like, okay, I got the monster clay, got the thing, spent a couple hours sculpting the thing, and then for me like I've done that so many times with so many things, and really it's just, does it stick?
Right.
Did it stick? Am I still pumped to go do that? Yes. Okay, then I'm going to keep doing it.
Right.
No, then it just falls by the wayside.
Sure.
And then
Until
I'll feel bad about it.
Yeah,
Usually
yeah.
I see it and I'm like, fuck, I really should finish that project. I got
Sure.
like so far into it, you know.
That's the battle, right?
That's the battle.
That's the battle.
Especially now with a kid and another one on the way. It's like there's so little time in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, it's a mental game too. It's prioritizing instead of, what's going to bring me more fulfillment tomorrow. Right now, the fulfilling thing is going to be watching fight videos on YouTube or watching like, Karen's getting thrown out of Trader Joe's on Reddit because that's entertaining in the moment. But tomorrow I'm going to really enjoy sculpting, and then tomorrow I'm still going to look back on that time and think time well spent.
Right. Yeah, I think it would, to me it sounds like a little bit the struggle is, right? You have inspiration / motivation, which can be a very powerful force that gets you excited about a new thing. But the problem is inspiration is a fleeting feeling.
Yeah.
It's not reliable and sticks around with you. So
there's a super popular, famous YouTuber podcaster who just did a video about this. I feel like.
Oh, okay. He did a whole breakdown of this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a concept that I've wrestled with for a long time, and I came to terms
Nick
with.
Zerman, I think. Is his
Oh, did I do a whole podcast about this?
You did a video. On
motivation is bullshit.
Yeah, motivation is bullshit video. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's other YouTube videos out there floating around.
Yeah,
this
I'm
concept.
sure.
But it is. It's fleeting, and then but the cultivation of habit and discipline is reliable.
Right.
It's not as fun feeling. It's not as great.
Right.
And like you said, it's prioritization. So if you realize that was, but like you said, it's cool to try it out because then, like you said, well, what if it sticks? Because if it sticks, that's amazing. You found this new passion.
I could look back 20 years from now.
Cooking was a passion, right?
Right.
Bartending is a passion.
And those things for me have turned into
and they do stick.
Revenue sources.
Right.
I mean, like, and only when they naturally do so. I mean, like, okay, I launched this cocktail thing and I've done a few events and it's made me a couple grand. Like,
because you offered it as a package, right?
Right. Yeah. It just kind of fit. It fit. It wasn't like I didn't have to force it. It wasn't difficult.
And I can see the mug
thing. It
things
didn't take discipline. That's what it
in.
is. It didn't take discipline.
Right. It happened.
Like it just happened and it felt natural.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I really want to make all my money doing my entrepreneurial stuff because I can spend 50 hours a week working on it and it doesn't feel like, I mean, that adage is fucking stupid. The like, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Like, you're probably not working hard enough then, you lazy bitch. Like, you should probably push yourself more.
Right.
But it doesn't feel the same as clocking in and clocking out.
Right.
For sure.
It's
it feels
easier to
way
wake
more
up
fulfilling.
and get moving.
I can look at myself, that fantasy version of myself, that like what I'm aspiring to, and look at that time spent on my own projects and making money with that and feel really good about it.
Right. Everyone has to
get a sense of self-worth.
The crap part. Because, I think there's some stat or interview out there about people who followed their passion and became wildly successful. And when you actually interview them about how their time is broken up, only 5% of their time is actually doing the passion.
Yeah.
And then 95% is the back end bull crap
I do
that
a
you
lot
have
of
to do to run the business and
lot of quote
scheduling
requests
or whatever.
A lot of scrubbing dishes, mostly washing dishes and grocery shopping.
Right.
Not
Right.
necessarily super fun activities.
Right.
You know, but the time as a whole is fulfilling.
Right. Because you know it's building up to that opportunity where you get to do the thing that you are passionate about.
And a counterpoint to the discipline thing, because I am super into that idea of like, what is it, Jocko Willink, who's like, discipline will set you free.
Right.
You know,
Schedule
strict structure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is anti me. That is not my life at all. Like, my sleep schedule is absolutely bonkers. It's not a schedule.
Right. You're spontaneous.
It's not. It's complete spontaneity. Like, and
Jocko would want to slap you across the
yes,
face.
Yes, and it has a lot of downfalls. Like, I really struggle with like my weight and having these fitness goals that fall by the wayside, and trying to constantly change what I'm doing to find something that I can really keep up with.
That is
like,
sustainable.
Jiu-jitsu was a good one. Jiu-jitsu lasted years.
Sure.
Of me doing that, and that's probably the best shape I've been in that I can ever remember, was when I was doing that 3 or 4 days a week. That was a big one, and I want to do it again when the quarantine allows. You know,
yeah.
When
they reopen.
Yeah, when they reopen gyms, get back into that, because that'll probably help, especially if I can bring race with me. Now it's like family bonding time.
Cool, yeah.
Because there's some places that'll do like father-son, mother-daughter, whatever,
classes.
Parent-child jiu-jitsu classes and wrestling and stuff, and that's also like super difficult. So it builds character. Anyway, yeah, there's downfalls to it, but at the same time, like, I don't know, I like really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I enjoy like living this way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it gives me the freedom to be like, I'm taking like 6 or 7 weeks off this year.
Right.
Like, I can really just like buckle down, work really hard for 3 weeks.
But those are scheduled.
Make extra money. Yeah, it's scheduled. It's not pure. It's not just like, let's go to Belize, you know.
Well, but something that can be really feel good is like spontaneity can be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you finish your thought on spontaneity, but what I want to add about the, I forget where I read this, but that oftentimes the feeling of excitement and joy and happiness that people have is the anticipation of a thing.
Yeah.
It's not the thing itself.
Yeah.
So it's actually good. It's healthy if you want to try to have a happy week. I think of like happiness as like on weekly basis, not daily basis. You're gonna have tough days.
Yeah.
But if you try to schedule something for yourself that nurtures your soul once a week, and then you have the whole week to look forward to that thing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And that gets you through the hard times of the week because you have something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And it's schedule that is scheduling is empowering in that sense.
Yeah. Well, that's a big one for me, because like, specifically with like my fitness goals, that's kind of what I'm thinking about now, because it's what I've been focusing on, and it's easy to think about it when I'm really, really hungry. And I'm like, no, bitch, you're gonna wait a little longer. You're just gonna wait a couple more hours, you know. But like, I think of going to like the Adirondacks or some other trips during the summer, or late summer, early fall, where like, I know I'm going to enjoy those better if when I'm there and swimming and stuff, I don't look like a fat slob.
Sure.
You know, where like I get in good enough shape that like I
love your body.
I don't feel shame. I don't feel, or even not even shame, just like regret, you know, or just like not super happy with it.
Sure.
You know, I'll just feel better. So like, using that as a motivational tool and something to look ahead, it makes it real easy for me easier to make the decision to
deal with the suffering.
Yeah, exactly. Suffer now, rewards later.
Yeah.
It's classic. It's what is that?
Delayed gratification.
Thank you. Delayed gratification. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I love the spontaneity concept, because I think it's a balance where you're not always delaying gratification. You allow for instant gratification to occur on a regulated basis. You know, you're not going so spontaneity that it's like constantly your life is just instant gratification. Then you have no planning.
That sounds like a nightmare. That just sounds like unstable.
Right. It's just Dimitri, you know.
my old roommate. Dimitri. Hell yeah. Well, he was so young, man. It's hard. I lived my life way more like that.
Sure. in the early 20s, right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, like 18, 19, 20 was like fully that.
Right.
Like, yeah, I have work at 8 o'clock, but it's midnight now, and there's an after hours that's opening in half an hour. So I'll get like half an hour of sleep, and yeah, that'll be enough. Tomorrow me will deal with that, you know? And it's so funny because my self awareness was not kicked in at that point, and so looking back, like, I had like older coworkers who probably looked at me like, you fucking slob, dude. Like coming in, wearing the same shit as the day before, eyes all bloodshot, nodding off at work and shit. Oh man. Yeah, but no,
Good times, right?
yeah, you gotta have a balance of that stuff. It's like
Right.
a fulfillment and pleasure. Like the pleasure is like, yeah, you like the idea of like, I'm just never gonna have a cheeseburger again because that's not good for your body. Like, wow, your life sucks, bro. Like, Jesus. But then the idea of I'm gonna have a hamburger every day, you're probably not gonna enjoy that hamburger,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And the fulfillment of like, I didn't do that, and now I'm in good shape. Like,
And now I can
also
enjoy
an
it.
insane amount of uh, fulfillment comes from that. Not even necessarily pleasure, like
Right.
short-term pleasure, but long-term fulfillment. You want to be fulfilled.
You accomplish something.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
want to feel. You want to feel good about it. You want to, you want to have pleasure, but then you also want to feel good about yourself and your life and
Right.
your decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Sean, private school, public school.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
You gotta
Well,
take a stance. You gotta tell people what you are doing.
I think I think it depends on what you want for your kids. I mean, I obviously it really helps that private school is a slam dunk for me because my mother and sister run and operate a couple of private schools now, and so that's all taken care of until our kids are like 12.
I see.
So it's really only middle and high school that we have to worry about. Even all
Sure.
the way through elementary, they're set. So they're going to go to private for that. Obviously, having gone to a private, I've never gone to a public school.
Sure.
We both went to our private school, and that's all we knew.
Right.
Um,
I went to a public university,
yes,
but
I'm
yeah,
sure that helped.
all the K through 12 is all private.
What I will say is that having such a small private school did hurt in the way of diversity, both of like people and cultural backgrounds and things like that, and then also diversity of way of life and thought. Like,
Right.
it was all people who are sending their kids to this school because this school shares their mindset.
Right. It's like
So
a
all
thought
their
bubble.
kids, yeah, all their kids share that mindset. So that's the mindset I got, and then I got out. It left me somewhat unprepared for the real world in that way. In a lot of other ways, it left me way more responsible and way more prepared, and I mean, like, more opportunity to be smart. Going to a private school, I don't think necessarily is going to mean you're more educated. It's going to mean if you do the work, there's more opportunity to be to become more educated.
Right.
So
There's more resources, maybe.
yes. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, our teacher to student ratio was awesome. It's like fucking eight students to a teacher. It's nuts.
Right.
Maybe a little more students to teachers than that, but not much.
Right. Right.
A lot of one-on-one time, a lot of resources. Um, yeah, I mean, really, it comes down to in America. It depends on where you live. You could be right next to a charter school that's like kick ass.
Right.
In which case, that's probably going to be better than a lot of your private school options.
Sure.
Or you could be living in a bad neighborhood with a bad school, and it's probably going to be better to try to find private schooling for your children.
Right. Right.
It's too bad that our system is set up where the school's resources is based are the school's resources are based on the income of the area that the school is in.
Right. Property taxes.
Right.
I think that's California specific. It actually does vary from state to state, but
Sure.
California is
Well,
property
that's all I
taxes,
really
which
know.
is a bummer.
I'm
Yeah.
born and raised
Right.
here. So you end up with like
Huge discrepancies.
huge discrepancies. Yeah, where you can get these private schools or public schools. I mean, I remember.
La Cañada High School. Yeah.
Well, I think of what was the one out west, like the Sunland? Is that La Cañada High?
Oh,
The one that
no,
was
La
at
Cañada is
Sunland?
the one that really nice.
No, no. So there's La Cañada High, and then
Right.
out closer to
Sunland.
us, it wasn't Sunland High
Right.
School. It was
Verdugo.
yeah,
Verdugo High.
Verdugo High.
Yeah.
It was
Not-
like
not a
how
good
they,
school.
their like extracurricular was how to build a meth lab. Like it was like not good. And I had a cousin who went there, and it was like not good.
Right.
He would tell me about like these. He told me about it when I was young, and he told me about this fight where this one chick bit out another chick's belly button piercing.
Oh, no.
How fucking gnarly is that?
Oh.
You know, so I don't want my kid to be around that.
Right,
So
sure.
if that's the high school, but if I'm in La Cañada, hell yeah, go to this yuppie public school. You know, like,
Right.
sure.
Right.
So I don't know. Most likely it's gonna be private.
Sure.
Most likely it's gonna be private. You know, you get a little more control. You get to see what's going on. You get to be a little more involved, especially if it's a smaller place.
What do you think is the main purpose of school, though? The
get-
main point of school for kids?
I think it's just babysitting. Like, I just get them out of my fucking hair. I'm tired of having them around. I think it's giving you the tools you need to be able to approach life. It's growth, right? So like, there's obviously basic things I think everyone should know. I think there's like, you know, how to read, how to write, math,
Right.
all that stuff. But I also would I loved that our school really had a lot of focus on teaching you how to better yourself. And I wish there was more of like a non-traditional school structure of like, yeah, you should leave school knowing how to do certain things that all adults should know how to do, and that they end up learning in like their 20s if they
Right.
learn at all. You should
Right.
know how to do your taxes. You should know how our economy works. You should first learn how our government's supposed to work,
Right.
and then later learn how our government actually works now, you know, a couple hundred years after its conception,
Sure.
which is way different.
Right.
Critical thinking.
I think critical thinking, huge one.
Critical
right?
thinking is a massive one.
Right.
Yeah, that is just not considered.
It's not part of the
a
curriculum.
normal curriculum,
Mhm.
right? Critical thinking is a huge one. But I think also having a guidance counselor or somebody who can help you direct into at least a jumping off point for when you get out. Where are you going? You're going to go to college? Okay, let's help you get that set up.
Right.
Are you going to go directly into a field? Great, let's help you get that set up. When I got out of high school, I floated for like 4 or 5 months before landing an internship in a really nice professional kitchen.
And did the school facilitate that, or was that
Not
something
at all.
Okay.
I really wish they would have. They did a lot, but I wish they would have been like, okay, you want to
What's
get
your plan here?
Right.
Yeah.
And my plan was to find a job in a kitchen, so they could have, if they, you know, had focused. If I had a guidance counselor, somebody
Sure.
whose focus was okay, after high school, now what?
Right.
Then they would have. If that was my job, I would have been looking for a place to stick you. I would have at least like set up because before I wanted to go to culinary school, and the culinary school I wanted to go to, they required you to have 6 months of work experience in a kitchen before you could go, which is really smart. Because a place like Le Cordon Bleu doesn't do that, and the amount of people who finish $50,000 worth of schooling at Le Cordon Bleu, get a kitchen job, realize they're going to be scrubbing dishes for $8 an hour, and now have $50,000 in debt, and don't like the job that they just trained for 2 years to do, is like, there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Big oops.
Yeah.
Big oops. Big oops. So they required 6 months of work experience, and that's why I got the job there. And like 3 months in, I was like, I'm not fucking going to school. This is awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm learning so much. I can't imagine they would teach me more.
You're learning so
at
much,
school.
and you're getting a paycheck, even if it's a small paycheck.
Hell yeah.
And that feels so
like
good.
60 hours a week, getting that sweet $250 paycheck. Oh, yum, yum, yum. I could pay for gas maybe. God, I made so little. Oh, it was horrible. The first like 4 years of my working life, I made so little. Oh, maybe longer than that.
Yeah, right. It's a painful phase.
Oh God, rough. But yeah, that's I think those are the important things. So if you find, I mean, there's some like magnet schools and stuff out there that really
Sure.
have some very progressive programs, and they are publicly funded, and I think they're slam dunks.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Right.
but I think it varies so much from school to school, and so you
Sure.
kind of really have to see what's in your area and make your decision.
So for you, it's not about the public or private. It's
No,
just about
that's
what's being provided.
inconsequential, right?
Right. Right.
And I mean, it's just like one of those things where, like, yeah, if it's a private school, it's gonna be a lot of money,
Right.
But it's priorities too. I wouldn't even question that. Like, of course, that money is money well spent,
Right.
you know.
No, I mean, I think the big thing that I had a discussion with Anna about this morning,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a point which was, well, obviously, I think school over homeschool, right? Socialization is a big thing. We didn't really talk about that, but I think you get socialization from private or public, right?
Sure.
Other than you mentioned,
And it depends how
diverse
good.
backgrounds
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
there's a quality. You're gonna get an education no matter where you go. It's the quality of it. So it's
Right.
what's the quality of your diversity?
Right.
Yeah. Anywho.
And then a thought that I had was, I think, especially how developed the internet now is, and
Mm-hmm.
the access to the internet, like pretty much universally in the United States, at least everyone's going to have access to internet
Mm-hmm.
and have some type of device to access the internet.
Of course. Yeah.
And I think that's a huge thing that helps level the playing field.
Yeah.
And now I don't really,
I love
personally,
that.
I don't really care. I kind of said to Anna, like, look, if the public school in our neighborhood is, let's say, not the best,
Mm-hmm.
or the quality of teaching and education is not the best,
Mm-hmm.
but I worked we used the school as like a polling location for the election, and I was there for 5-6 days, and I'm seeing
Mm-hmm.
the kids, I'm seeing smiles, I'm seeing laughter, I'm seeing good energy.
That's
Even though maybe they don't have the nicest textbooks, or the teachers aren't like Harvard graduate teachers,
mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't really care, because I know you can go on the internet and find the best Algebra 1 lesson from the best Harvard mathematician ever, and it's free on Khan Academy.
Right.
And so if my kid's struggling on a thing, like, I know where to, it's just a matter of presenting them with the resources. And the
Right.
internet is like this powerful resource that's free to anyone, and income is not, an issue, to the extent that you got to be able to afford an iPad and Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and teaching's also a dynamic thing. It's not like going and getting a bunch of education and being like the most qualified is necessarily going to prepare you for teaching a high school class.
Right.
And everybody's situation is different. So you could get a high school teacher who's a million times better than some private school teacher, just because the private school teacher was more qualified, so they got the job.
Right.
So it's like you can find that. I do worry about, like, I don't know. There's a
Right,
vetting.
drugs,
There's
balance.
a vetting process
Mhm,
to a
mhm.
private school, which is like that
Sure.
weird elitist sort of thing, which I don't know. There's a lot of like weird inherent racism stuff going on, but there's you know you're not going to you're going to have stricter guidelines to who's going to be attending that school,
Right.
and what influences are going to be around your children. You don't want to shield them, but you don't want to give them an opportunity to be in a bad situation.
Right.
I mean, even in our private school, like, I hung out with a group of kids who we would go off campus at lunch and smoke cigarettes and stuff.
Right. Right.
You
right.
know, and while I wasn't like I didn't become a smoker then because of that or whatever, like, I feel like that's going to be way more common in a public school. That being said, I found it in the private school,
Sure.
so
Right,
like
right, right.
you can't. There's only so much you can do.
It's hard to keep it out, regardless.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Rich kids rebel just as much as poor kids,
Right.
and private school students are gonna rebel too, probably even more, because they don't, you have a lot of parents who are more focused on the income or whatever. Maybe I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
I don't know.
I could see it as an argument, and I think, quote unquote, rich people. This is an argument, maybe, which is, I think a lot of rich people recognize sometimes that, um, just because they're successful is not because they were amazing, or the best lawyer, or the best chef, or whatever. Right? A lot of
You'd
it
hope so.
comes down to connections, and I think a lot of rich people think, if I put my kid in a school with a bunch of other rich families, and they become friends with those kids when they grow up, there's going to be more opportunities to get that job with your friend Joey's dad's business, or get that internship, or get into the movie industry or whatever. And you go into a public school, or a school that has lower income, I think there's the worry that, because let's be real, our friend circle is people that we grew up through our school
Yeah,
together. And I don't
yeah,
think that I think it's common, maybe not super common, but pretty common that your lifelong friends are the people that you became friends with in school.
yeah.
And that becomes
I
your
mean,
network
college is like
for
the big
success
one.
to
Yeah.
some degree, right?
Mhm.
Because my friend Dylan gets a job with my family because he knew me, and then gets into the solar industry, and that set him to then get the job at Tesla in his life,
Well,
right?
college even more so. I mean, you have a bunch of people going to law school to study law, and then when they all become lawyers, now they're all connected to each
Right,
other. Like,
right,
yeah.
right, yeah.
So it's like the classic. It's
The
the
networking,
classic.
yeah.
The classic networking
Yeah.
thing. That's true. That is definitely something.
And that's something to think about when you put your kid into school, that you want to try to provide them as
Yeah.
many good opportunities as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want them to connect with successful people, but
Right.
but like it's hard because you want monetary success will
It's not the
also
same, yeah.
but it'll also help lead to emotional success.
Right.
If you have parents who aren't worried about paying their bills every week, you're
Right.
probably going to have parents who are more active in your life,
Right.
which is probably going to lead to a more healthy emotional development.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's a weird one. I mean, talking
Yeah.
about leveling the playing field, that's one of those things where like giving opportunities to people in low income areas is like they have such a bigger hurdle to overcome. You know,
Mhm.
that's why I mean, we used to, I feel like both of us when we were younger used to believe in the whole like, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's like, well, let me put 7 pounds of rocks in your fucking shoes. Now pull your boots up now, bitch. Like, it's such a bad argument, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Not to say that, no one can be responsible for their own well being and their own, making better of their own situation, but yeah, I mean, the more you have, the more opportunity to give that to your kids.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think it's important not to be completely money driven. However, money is just as necessary for survival as water and food.
To a point. That's the thing.
To a limit.
Point.
To a point. Right.
To a point. As soon as you don't have to worry about your bills ever,
right,
you're full stop. Like
take
focus on other things.
That's
you
when
should
you
do
need to
better
shift.
now.
Right.
And that's how you get people who like just hoard money
Right.
and they're not happier. They're not happier. And I grew up around those people who it's like, you're making $250,000 a year. Why are you miserable all the time? Why are you slovenly and like have shitty body and don't do anything productive other than just work? Like, you don't have to.
Right.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You can make less money, be just as happy as far as paying your bills go. Maybe don't have a Corvette.
Right. I think the problem is every time they get that pay
It's a
increase,
pit.
they adjust the price of the lifestyle,
Yeah.
and the cost of the lifestyle goes up. So then they have to keep working, and then it's this vicious cycle.
Well, that's what we talked about on our last interview too. It's like our last podcast, I should say. It was like, yeah, it's not just about making more money. It's about making more money and needing less.
Right.
Yeah. You look at happiness. Happiness isn't focused on areas with the highest income. It's focused in areas where the lifestyle is good. I mean, you look at like some
people's
some
needs are
European
low.
countries
Yeah.
where like they have this insanely high tax rate and they're not making more money than we are in general, but they don't have to worry about their needs. Their needs are taken care of. So they're freed up to really do other stuff.
Right. Be creative.
Yeah.
Enjoy life.
Right.
Yeah.
Or hyper focus in their field if that's what they
Right.
want to do.
Sure.
Fine. But they don't have to worry about, their health care and making sure that all of that's taken care of. They don't have to worry about what an ambulance ride costs and
Right.
juggle all that. That's crazy pants.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Really what I'm trying to say is America would be better as a communism.
Beautiful.
Yeah, if we just adopted communism.
I pray to the manifesto.
Yeah. I think you just take the 1%, you just kill them all in like a violent riot, and you redistribute the wealth evenly amongst everyone.
Right. You make the plumber
Perfectly.
in charge of the science labs.
Yep. You're gonna want to do that. Everyone's equal. I say just get rid of the science lab. Just kill all the scientists.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Right.
Everyone should be artists or farmers, and
right.
that's it.
That's it.
And definitely it won't reform into an oligarchy or a dictatorship because that doesn't happen.
Right.
Yeah. That's really the point of everything I've tried to say today.
Beautiful.
Hey, thanks, man.
Hey, anything else you want to share or talk about?
I don't think so, other than how absolutely pumped I am that we're both going to have daughters of a very similar age.
Yeah, man. I was
How
telling
crazy is
Anna,
that? That's gonna be so fucking
if Cheyenne's late and Anna's early,
Uh-huh.
they could have the same birthday.
Uh-huh.
That could
That'd
be cool.
Nuts. Joint birthday parties and stuff.
I mean, yeah.
You better believe Cheyenne's gonna be dressing our daughters up in matching outfits. You better fucking believe that's gonna happen. Oh man, that's one thing.
Mine's gonna be super ugly, and
Oh,
your
I
guys
don't
is
think
gonna
so.
be
You guys-
adorable.
No. You're gonna have a really
Looking at
daughter.
Race, I'm like, it's hard. That's gonna be that's tough to be. He was quite a beautiful baby.
We make pretty babies, but your babies are going to be adorable. Yeah,
Anna was an ugly baby, and I was an ugly baby. So combined.
I don't know. I don't think that's how that works. I don't think that's how that works. You got those Italian genes.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at like you at like 2 or 3 years old though.
Sure, I was cute.
Like,
Yeah.
super cute. You got
Yeah.
those curls and shit. Oh man.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I wouldn't be too worried about that. Man, maybe as like a baby.
Yeah.
Maybe as like a little baby, it'd be ugly as fuck.
Dude, super ugly.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
But Race was like, I think one of the first babies that I was like, oh, that's a pretty baby.
Yeah, he was pretty.
You know,
he came out pretty.
because people were always like, oh, they're so cute. I'm like, that's a like a weird alien rat thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a pretty.
Not a pretty baby
thing.
Yeah.
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 So.
It's one of those things. But I'm pumped for that.
Yeah.
Makes me wish we lived just a little closer together. Although we'll make it work.
Yeah.
We'll get time.
No, I think, it'd be awesome to see each other on a daily basis. Like I even my next door neighbor, actually, I don't see on a daily basis. He's a really
Sure.
cool guy, great energy.
I'm sure we would see each other less than we're imagining we would see each other if we
Yeah,
lived
you
way
still
closer.
live lives, but
Yeah.
I remember when we
Super
were
busy.
roommates, we didn't necessarily like get to hang out all the time.
That's true, actually.
You know?
That's true. We didn't even hang out that much more often than we do now. It was nice to be able to just be like,
Watch a TV show together.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
that was
cool.
nice, and especially with the kids, because like what we can't do is like after school our kids can hang out for an hour,
Right.
because like that's
It's
just
just
trek.
Mm-hmm.
It's a trek logistically. Pile up. Oh, now it's rush hour. That's
Yeah.
gonna take me an hour and a half to get there.
Right. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But I think weekends
weekend
can
stuff.
be plenty.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weekends and like, hey, you're going to train town, travel town. Cool. I'll meet you there.
Right.
You know?
That's the big one. That's
Yeah.
the big one. And it's also, I mean, that's what we've been doing with family time anyway. Because I was like, okay, Cheyenne had something planned for Saturday morning. I'm gonna have Race. Instead of just hanging out with him here, I'm gonna go take him to do something. How about I take him to Travel Town? Tell my sister. Tell my mom. Both of them are like, sure, yeah, I'll come with you.
When they show up.
And
Sure.
yeah, and so we get some time together. We get to chat. and
That's
stuff.
cool.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for the future. I'm excited, like you mentioned,
too.
the summer. You guys are gonna come by to the lake house and stuff.
Yes. Oh my God. At least a month we're gonna spend with you guys out there.
Whoa!
I just won't work. I'll just put it all on credit cards. Totally worth it.
Yeah.
I'm very
Beautiful. Thanks for recording, man.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Any old time.
Dude.
Thanks for suggesting it.
Yeah.
And coming over early.
I love it.
Yeah. Hell yeah, brother. Love you, man.
Love you too. Peace, everyone.